When a missing goddess topples an empire of glass, only one mind in Manhattan can sift truth from vanity. Settle in for intrigue, wit and danger inside the Amber Citadel. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Subscribe so you never miss upcoming mysteries. Nero Wolfe and the affair at the Amber Citadel. The storm started by sneaking down 35th Street like a racketeer ducking process servers, but by the time it hit our brownstone, it had developed a personal grudge. Rain beat at the windows hard enough to make Fritz mutter about leaks while he polished the silver. Wolfe was upstairs with his orchids, leaving me in the office to enjoy the romantic sound of thunder and the less romantic smell of typewriter ribbon. At 10:42 the doorbell rang, a long, determined buzz that suggested the visitor had paid full retail for the right to disturb my evening. Fritz looked up from the doorway, towel in hand. "I'll take it," I said. "You stick to civilization." I opened the door and got a lungful of perfume that could have dissolved granite. She stood there like the climax of a Technicolor melodrama, slim, drenched, and gripping a handbag as if it contained the Ark of the Covenant. Emerald green gloves gleamed against the black of her raincoat. The hat had once been expensive, the hair underneath still was. "Mr. Goodwin?" she asked breathlessly. "Archie Goodwin?" "That's right," I said, stepping back before her perfume ate the finish off the woodwork. "Come in before the street finishes drowning." She swept inside, dripping on Fritz's polished floor. Up close, her eyes were the shade department store's label, storm-tossed grey. She had cheekbones sharp enough to slice bread and a nervous habit of biting her lower lip between sentences. "I must see Mr. Wolfe," she said. "It's urgent, terribly urgent." "It usually is," I told her, closing the door on the weather. "Unfortunately, Mr. Wolfe is currently communing with his orchids, and interrupting that ritual ranks somewhere between arson and treason." Her gloved hands twisted together. "Please, you don't understand. My employer's collection, one of his pieces, it's gone, vanished. And if it's not found tonight, there will be scandal, ruin." I led her toward the office, flipping on the lamp. "You've come to the right ruin control department. Have a seat. Name, occupation, and what priceless trinket decided to take a walk." She hesitated, then sat, crossing her knees with trained elegance. "My name is Delia Varn. I'm social secretary to Mr. Harlan Chetwynd." That made my eyebrows climb a little. Even I had heard of Chetwynder, the industrial baron who'd spent the last year erecting a new skyscraper on Madison Avenue, the Amber Citadel. The thing gleamed like a honeycomb under sunlight and had already been featured in half the Sunday supplements. "You mean the Chetwynder?" I said. "The man who decided Manhattan needed a monument to optimism." She nodded miserably. "Yes. The Amber Citadel is to open its private museum wing tomorrow evening. Tonight there was to be a preview, just the trustees, the press, a few benefactors. But when Mr. Redden, the curator, opened the display room an hour ago, the central exhibit was gone." "What exhibit?" "The Amber Venus," she said, her voice catching. "A statue carved from a single block of Baltic amber, worth, well, enough to buy this house twice over. Mr. Chetwynd commissioned it as the Citadel's symbol. It was his pride. If it's stolen, or worse—" "Worse?" She pulled something from her bag with trembling fingers. A telegram, damp around the edges but legible. The yellow paper looked as if it had already been read too many times. "Return what was promised or you'll join it in pieces." I gave a low whistle. "Friendly people you mix with." "It came to Mr. Chetwynder's office this afternoon," she said. "He dismissed it as a hoax, but now the statue's gone and he's in conference upstairs at the Citadel. I begged him to call the police, but he refuses. He said it must be handled discreetly. So," she lifted her chin, "so I came to you." "Not to me," I corrected, "to Nero Wolfe." "Yes," her eyes pleaded. "He's the only one in New York who can help." I studied her for a moment. Everything about her screamed sincerity, but in my line, sincerity often wears borrowed clothes. "You do realize it's raining bullets out there and you're dripping on one of Fritz's rugs worth more than a congressional salary?" She flushed. I'm sorry." "Forget it. Wolfe likes people who make an entrance. He doesn't like puddles, though, so I'll get a towel and a coffee. If he throws you out, you'll at least be warm when it happens." I left her by the fire and buzzed the office phone connecting upstairs. Wolfe's voice emerged, rich and testy. "Yes, Archie?" "Client material, sir. Female, decorative, and in full bloom. Says her boss owns the Amber Citadel and mislaid a goddess. A pause thick enough to cut. At this hour? Phooey. Tell her to return tomorrow at 4. She's dripping sincerity and perfume on your rug, and she's got a telegram that might interest even your aversion to emergencies. Another pause, longer. Then reluctantly. Send her up. No, bring her in. But if she collapses, you will attend her. I will not have hysteria in my office. Understood, I said, and hung up. When we entered the office, Wolfe was behind his desk, massive as the desk itself, in a dark yellow dressing gown that made him look like an irritated emperor. He did not stand, he never does, but his eyes flicked from the girl to the telegram, to the puddle forming near her shoes. Miss Varn, he said, I am Nero Wolfe. My assistant informs me you are in distress. Please keep your explanation concise. The rain outside already supplies melodrama enough. She clutched the telegram, voice trembling. Mr. Wolfe, I'm afraid, terribly afraid, that something dreadful will happen tonight if this isn't found. Indeed. And why bring it to me rather than to the police? Because if the police arrive before tomorrow's gala, Mr. Chetwinder's reputation— Wolfe raised a hand. Spare me the conventional justifications. You wish discretion. I, unfortunately, wish tranquility. The two rarely coincide. She rose halfway from her chair. Then you won't help? No. The single syllable hung in the air like a closing door. She swayed, catching the edge of the chair. I started forward just in time to grab her before she hit the rug. Easy, I said. You're fine. Breathe. But she didn't. She went limp in my arms, the telegram slipping from her fingers. Wolfe groaned. Archie, if you have produced this display to wheedle me, it is ill-conceived. Take it up with gravity, I said. She fainted on schedule. Lay her on the couch. Fritz. Fritz appeared in the doorway, immaculate as ever despite the storm. Wolfe's tone softened half an inch. Bring coffee. Strong. No spirits. Ja, Herr Wolfe. As Fritz left, I looked down at the telegram. The typeface wasn't standard Western Union. The letters had a slightly rounded R, the mark of a private telegraph company I'd used once near Rockefeller Center. A nice little clue blinking neon at me. Delia stirred as I noted it, murmuring, Pieces, the pieces. Miss Varn, I said, you're in one piece so far. Let's keep it that way. She opened her eyes, met mine, then glanced at Wolfe, whose frown had shifted from irritation to reluctant concern. Compose yourself, he said. You have made an appeal, and Mr. Goodwin, being cursed with chivalry, has made it his business. Very well. Return here tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon, and you will tell me the entire story from the beginning, with names, times, and proof that this telegram is genuine. Until then, I shall not stir a mental muscle. But, madam, he rumbled, I never act upon incomplete information, and certainly not during orchid hours. The clock on the wall ticked like an accomplice. She sat up slowly. You mean you won't even begin? Not before 4. At that time, my mind is free of horticultural obligations and capable of tolerating human folly. Fritz returned with the coffee tray. The aroma filled the office like a peace offering. Wolfe nodded approval. Set it there, thank you. He poured, handed the cup to her with surprising gentleness. Drink. Sedatives are for fools, caffeine is for thinkers. She managed a wan smile. You're very kind, Mr. Wolfe. He made a dismissive gesture. Kindness is irrelevant. Competence will serve you better. Archie, take her address, telephone, and any other facts she has the wit to recall. I took out my notebook. All right, Miss Varn. Let's start with where you live, and if there's any chance someone followed you here besides the weather. She gave me the details. An apartment near Sutton Place, a driver named Evans who'd dropped her off and gone home, a locked case that had held the statue earlier today. It was the sort of list that sounded thorough, but left more holes than a mob accountant's alibi. When she finished, Wolfe set his cup down. Miss Varn, you will go home now and remain there until you are summoned. Should any further telegrams arrive, you will forward them here immediately. Yes, Mr. Wolfe. She rose, regaining some poise. I fetched her coat and umbrella from the stand, neither of which would do much against the rain, but she seemed grateful anyway. As the door closed behind her, I turned back to Wolfe, who was watching the last curl of steam from his coffee. Well, I said. She fainted on your rug. She waved $20,000 worth of trouble, and you're sending her home to nap. That's either genius or negligence. He gave me a look that could curdle beer. Archie, our livelihood does not depend upon melodrama. We will ascertain her veracity at 4. Meanwhile, attend to the telegram. You noticed it too, huh? Private typeface. Of course. Do you imagine I spent decades refining perception only to be outdone by a puddle of perfume? Never crossed my mind. I'll have Saul check which telegraph office uses that font. He inclined his head. Do so. And for heaven's sake, wipe the floor before Fritz discovers another of your puddles. Gladly. It's not every day a goddess melts at my feet. Wolfe's lips twitched, almost a smile. Spare me your vainglory. We have work pending. As he reached for the bell cord to summon Theodore for his orchids, I gathered my hat and coat. Outside, thunder cracked again, loud enough to make even Wolfe glance toward the window. Phooey, he muttered. The city insists on dramatics. Yeah, I said, heading for the door. And judging by tonight's forecast, we're in for a whole week of them. If there's one thing I've learned about Manhattan's tallest buildings, it's that the higher you go, the lower people's morals tend to get. The Amber Citadel proved that theory in gold leaf. By the time the elevator slid open on the 40th floor, I half expected angels in evening dress. Instead, I got marble, mirrors, and a lobby that smelled like expensive varnish trying to cover old secrets. The guard who'd phoned ahead was stiff enough to salute himself. I signed the visitor's log and followed him through glass doors into the museum suite. Gold spotlights gleamed off black marble like whiskey off a conscience. Beyond the windows, Manhattan glared under morning sunlight, sleek, hard, and waiting to gossip. At the centre of it all stood Harlan Chetwynd himself. If confidence were currency, he could have bought the stock exchange and thrown in Brooklyn for garnish. Thick shoulders, square jaw, and a voice built to command blast furnaces. Goodwin? He boomed. Wolfe's man? I expected someone older. You should have ordered by catalogue, I told him. We ship what's fresh. That earned the faintest smile from the woman at his side. Evelyn Drake, the society patron. Tall, poised, and dressed in a shade of cream that probably came with its own insurance policy. Her calm eyes looked me over the way a banker sizes up counterfeit bills, politely, but with imagination. The third member of the trio was a different specimen entirely. Miles Redden, curator, bespectacled and fluttery, like an underfed sparrow wearing tweed. He wrung his hands as if art appreciation required wringing hourly. Chetwynd gestured toward the empty display plinth dominating the room. That, he said, is where my amber Venus should stand. Now, it's the world's most expensive absence. I took a leisurely look around. Skylight above, recently unlatched, judging by the fresh scratches near the lock. Cameras positioned at each corner, one bulb still warm to the touch. Somebody had used it within the hour. Pretty setup, I said. If the Venus wanted to elope, she picked the classiest exit in town. Chetwynd frowned. You're making light of theft. I specialize in making light of everything until it shows me where the shadows fall. Redden pushed his glasses up nervously. The locks were intact when I left last night, I swear it. Only the cleaning crew had access, and they've been with us since construction began. Then one of them built more than you bargained for, I said. Any sign of forced entry? He hesitated. None, unless you count the skylight, but it opens only from inside. Unless, Evelyn Drake murmured, someone with a key wanted it to look like an outside job. Chetwynd turned on her. You're implying betrayal within my staff. I'm implying nothing, she replied smoothly. But art inspires obsession, and obsession doesn't punch a time clock. That made him colour slightly, a detail I filed under useful later. I circled the plinth, hands in pockets. The pedestal's base was scuffed, amber dust glinting like sugar grains. Mr. Chetwynd, I assume this room had security film? Of course. 24 hours, continuous. Then where's the film canister for last night? Redden's Adam's apple did a dance. It seems to be missing. Chetwynd swung on him. You told me it was in the vault. I thought perhaps one of the technicians. I decided to step between them before marble turned into murder. Relax. Yelling won't make the film reappear, though it might loosen another skylight. When was the last time you personally saw the statue? Redden swallowed. Yesterday evening around 9. Miss Varn was cataloguing invitations in the office. I checked the humidity controls, then locked up. Miss Varn, I repeated. That's Delia Varn, your secretary. Yes. His gaze darted to Evelyn, then away. She's efficient. The pause was long enough to hold more than efficiency. Evelyn's smile didn't flicker, but her eyes cooled. A red herring the size of a tuna flopped somewhere in that triangle. I sauntered to the window. Midtown glittered below, sunlight striking the Chrysler spire like a warning flare. Nice view, I said. Symbolic, too. The city at your feet, the gods above your head, and one missing goddess in between. Chetwynder exhaled smoke from a fat cigar. You're enjoying this. I'm on salary, I said. Enjoyment's free. My pocket buzzed. The brownstone line routed through the hotel switchboard per Wolfe's paranoia. I picked up the nearest desk phone. Goodwin, Wolfe's voice rumbled. You are gadding about like a moth around a flame. Flames were evidence glows, I told him. And speaking of glow, the Citadel's missing statue may have left a trail. Spare me metaphor. Facts, Archie. Scratched skylight, missing film, curator with nerves on elastic, and a boss who could out-bellow a foghorn. Oh, and the patron saint of high society watching it all like she's rehearsing for sainthood. A soft grunt that could mean amusement, or the need for beer. Do not provoke anyone until you return. Your tendency toward pyrotechnics is ill-timed before lunch. Understood. I'll keep the matches in my pocket. He hung up. Wolfe never says goodbye. It would imply equality. When I turned back, Evelyn Drake was studying me with polite curiosity. You report directly to Mr. Wolfe? Every breath, I said. He times them. Chetwynder ground his cigar in an ashtray. Tell him I expect results, not epigrams. The opening is tomorrow. If that statue isn't recovered, my reputation and this building will collapse in ridicule. Then let's avoid architectural tragedy. I slid a handkerchief from my pocket and carefully picked up the still warm camera bulb. Mind if I take this for a look? I promise to return it unharmed, unlike your Venus. Chetwynder looked ready to object, then waved a thick hand. Take what you need. I'm calling the insurance company. He stomped off toward his office. That left me with Redden and Evelyn. The curator whispered, You must understand, Mr. Chetwynd is under terrible strain. The Amber Venus wasn't just art. It was his wife's memorial. She died last year. Touching, I said. But grief doesn't usually steal its own statue. Evelyn's voice slid in, smooth as cream. Perhaps not, Mr. Goodwin, but sometimes grief breeds desperation. Harlan's investments haven't performed as well as his speeches. Are you hinting the Venus walked out to cover debts? I'm saying, she replied, that ambition can turn even amber brittle. Another line for the notebook. I crouched near the plinth again, pretending to study dust while noting the pattern of shoe prints around it. Large male size, another smaller, high-heeled. Do you wear sixes, Miss Drake? She lifted a brow. Sevens? Why? Because whoever last admired this artwork forgot to admire their own footprints. Redden looked horrified. You think one of us? I think a lot, I said. It keeps me young. The phone on the curator's desk rang, and he jumped a foot. Evelyn answered. Yes, understood. She replaced the receiver delicately. Mr. Chetwynder's secretary will bring up police clearance forms for your signature. He insists everything remain internal until Mr. Wolfe decides otherwise. Convenient, I said. Internal theft stays internal. Her eyes met mine. And gossip stays external. I trust you appreciate discretion. Lady, I sell it by the yard. I gave the room one last sweep. The light caught something under a pedestal leg, a thin strand of golden fibre, sticky at one end. I teased it free with a pencil. Resin, melted amber, a souvenir. Mr. Redden, I said casually, did the Venus have any flaws? Cracks, repairs? He blinked. No, she was perfect. Except, he hesitated. Except I sometimes wondered if she was too perfect. Meaning? He glanced toward Evelyn, then whispered, There were rumours the statue Chetwynder unveiled last month wasn't the original. The true Amber Venus was damaged during shipment, but he forbade discussion. The donors would never know. That little confession could buy me lunch. So, if someone stole it, maybe they stole a fake. Or maybe someone wanted to hide that fact before tomorrow's show. Redden's face went pale. I never said—" "You didn't have to." Evelyn's tone hardened. "Mr. Goodwin, speculation of that nature could destroy reputations." "I specialize in salvage work," I said. "If there's nothing else you'd like to confess before I report to Wolfe—" "There isn't," she said crisply. "But if you plan to climb further into this tower, mind the drop." "Thanks, I'll pack a parachute." I pocketed the fibre, signed the clearance forms Delia Varn brought in, and rode the gold elevator back down. She looked steadier than last night, though her eyes were rimmed with worry. "Did Mr. Wolfe send you?" she asked softly. "He sent me because he didn't want to come himself," I said. "That's how we maintain the partnership." She managed a thin smile. "Then you saw Mr. Chetwynd?" "Yes, and if ego were electricity, he could power the Citadel." Her hand tightened on the folder she carried. "Please, be careful what you say around him. He doesn't forgive easily." "Neither do I told her, "especially when people steal goddesses." She vanished into the upper floors as I stepped out into the marble lobby. Rain streaked the tall windows again, Manhattan's idea of washing its conscience. I pulled out my notebook, jotting down 3 items: scratched skylight, missing film, amber fibre. Under that I wrote, "Too perfect, ill fake," and drew a neat question mark. Then I added a final line: "Call Wolfe before he decides to lecture by telegram." By the time I reached the street, the sky had gone from gold to pewter. Cabs hissed past like rumours. I found a payphone, dialed the brownstone, and heard Wolfe's deep voice roll through static. "Well?" "The Venus might have been a phony," I said. "And if so, somebody made sure the forgery disappeared before anyone noticed." A pause, then, "Intriguing. Continue, carefully." "Careful's my middle name," I said. "I doubt it. Return when you have something less conjectural and more edible." "Like lunch?" "Precisely. Fritz is preparing calf's liver." "Then I'll hurry," I said, hanging up. I stepped back into the drizzle, looked up at the glowing spire of the amber citadel, and muttered, "Nice view from the top, but the fall's what kills you." The phone started nagging before the sun had decided whether it cared about Manhattan, which is never a good omen unless you sell coffins. I got the receiver and said, "Goodwin, if this isn't breakfast, it better be blood." The voice was Delia Varn's, tight and breathless. "Mr. Goodwin, please, there's been an accident at the Amber Citadel. Mr. Redden he's under one of the bronzes. Mr. Chetwynd said to call you, not the police. You must come." That woke me fine. "Listen, touch nothing, move nothing, and tell Mr. Chetwynd a discreet doesn't mean illegal. I'm coming." I checked the clock, 6:21 a.m. Early, but murder keeps its own hours. I dressed fast, skipped Fritz's coffee, an act of self-sacrifice that ought to be deductible, and was in a cab while the streetlights still blinked like they wanted another hour. The Amber Citadel rose out of Madison like it had pushed the night aside. Inside, the lobby guards were rattled. Delia met me at the private elevator, pale under a hat that had lost its nerve, emerald gloves bright against her coat. "They're upstairs," she whispered. "They wouldn't let me stay in the hall." "For once they're earning pay," I said, and took the elevator up. The museum floor was hushed and bright with that flat dawn light that makes everything look honest until you look close. In the sculpture hall, black marble carried footsteps too well. At the far end, one of the big bronzes, a heroic athlete I remembered standing tall, lay on its side, base gouging the floor. Under it was Miles Redden. His body was twisted wrong, glasses crushed, one hand trapped, the other flung out. Even from 3 paces, I knew he wouldn't be fussing humidity charts. A guard said hoarsely, "He must have been polishing. It slipped." That was the morning's first lie. Cheap and convenient. "Sure," I said. "Bronze loves to stretch." I moved closer, careful to keep every motion visible. The base hadn't edged off gently. Something had driven it. Redden's free hand lay palm up. On the gold cufflink at that wrist, a smear caught my eye. Amber-coloured, fused hard into the metal, melted and set. You don't get that leaning near a display. You get it handling amber that's been cut, tampered with, or cracked. "Who found him?" "I did," a guard said. 6 o'clock, door was ajar. I swear I didn't touch him or the statue." "Hold that thought for Kramer," I told him. "Where's Mr. Chetwynd?" "Here," a voice boomed. Harlan Chetwynder came through a side door, big frame masked in respectability and a badly fastened tie. "Goodwin, this is dreadful," he said. "Poor Redden. An accident on the eve of the opening. We must prevent hysteria. Surely Mr. Wolfe can—" "No," I said. "What you've got is a corpse under a ton of artwork. That's police business." His jaw jumped. "If the department storms this floor, we lose everything. Investors, prestige." "Try explaining obstruction to a grand jury," I said, heading for the house phone. "If this turns out to be a tragic stumble, they'll print you in black border and move on. If not, you'll want a record that someone called the law." He didn't grab me. Smart man. I put in a call to homicide, kept it crisp. "Amber Citadel, top floor. Curator crushed by fallen bronze, looks bad. They promised an inspector. You don't send a rookie to a new skyscraper full of reputations." While we waited, I walked the walls with my eyes. No smashed cases, no extra scuffs where there shouldn't be, just one arranged disaster. Delia hovered near the doorway. Evelyn Drake arrived brisk and composed in a dark suit, veil down just so. "Terrible tragedy," she breathed. "Miles lived for this collection. He must have overworked himself." Another neat label for the public. Curator dies of devotion. I filed it under decorative nonsense. At 6:54, the elevator doors opened and delivered Inspector Kramer with 2 men and Pearly Stebbins. Kramer's hat sat crooked, his cigar was unlit but resentful, and his stare hit me first. "Hell," he said. "Wolfe's boy. I might have known." "Nice to see you too," I said. "I saved you a fresh body." "You better also have a clean story," he growled, but it was all duty, no heat. He went to the bronze, crouched, studied the gouge, the angle, the dead man. "Who touched what?" "Nobody since I got here," I said. "Before that, they say just the guard who saw him and yelled." "Stebbins," Kramer said. "Lock it down. Names, times, keys. Photographer." The flashbulbs began. White explosions threw the bronze and Redden into hard relief. Bent arm, broken lenses, the smear on the cufflink. Kramer's eye snagged it. "Hold that," he told the photographer, and bent closer. "What's that junk?" "Looks like amber fused to gold," I said. "Souvenir from a lady we're missing." He shot me a look. "I can see it without narration, Goodwin. Bag the cufflink." He straightened, rolled his shoulders. "Until the doc says otherwise, I'm calling this suspicious. Maybe he hauled on that thing and it bit back. Maybe someone helped." He turned on Chetwynder. "You wanted it quiet. Now you get it official." "Inspector," Chetwynder protested. "It's obviously an accident. He was the only one foolish enough to be here alone. The opening—" "Save that speech for the inquest," Kramer said. Then to me, "How'd you get here so fast?" "Miss Varn phoned me on your friend's instructions," I said. "I phoned you. That's the whole fairy tale." He studied my face, found nothing helpful, and grunted. "For once you didn't sit on it." That from Kramer was a small bouquet. "I'm sentimental about crushed curators," I said. I stepped away to the side office and called the brownstone. Fritz answered, transferred me. Wolfe's voice came through thick with early morning disapproval. "Report concisely." "Miles Redden is dead under a toppled bronze," I said. Delia called me. I called Kramer. "The hall's intact except for one skid mark. Melted amber fused on Redden's cufflink. Looks like he got cozy with our missing Venus after hours." Wolfe grunted. "Weight of the bronze?" "Heavy enough that nobody human nudges it by accident." You will obtain Mr. Redden's shoe size." I blinked at the receiver. "So we can outfit him for the hereafter." "Confound you. The particulate distribution you observed yesterday and this morning, if amber dust adhered to his shoes from proximity to the desecrated statue, it supports one inference, if not another. Shoe size, Archie." "One of these days you'll solve a case blindfolded if Fritz feeds you through a straw," I told him. "If you keep braying," Wolfe said, "I shall request precisely that arrangement. Cooperate with Inspector Kramer. Do not provoke him into obtuseness. Call again before 11. After that, I am engaged with orchids." He hung up. I rejoined the party in time to see Redden lifted free. His face had the surprised look of a man who'd expected tragedy to visit someone else. Delia gave a muffled sob. Evelyn's hand was on her arm, eyes dry and measuring. Chetwynder stood rigid, calculating damage. Kramer watched all of them, then hooked a finger at me. "Your boss up to his ears in this theft?" "He's up to his ears in logic," I said. "He also said your integrity is useful." Kramer's eyebrow twitched. "Wolfe said that?" I wouldn't libel him with a compliment he didn't mean. A brief pause. He accepted it with a grunt. All right. You tell him I've got a tidy story. Curator palms the statue, dumps the real one, fakes the record, statue gone, film missing, then something goes wrong and the bronze lands on him. If Wolfe thinks that stinks, he can do better. Until then, I run it my way. You'll hear from him, I said. Probably at dinner. Figures. He jabbed the cigar between his teeth. Goodwin, if you or Wolfe sit on evidence, I'll come through that brownstone wall. Otherwise, for now, we work. It was as close to teamwork as we ever get. As they rolled Redden out past the empty plinth, the smear on the cufflink already tagged and noted, I looked once more at the bronze on its side and the clean geometry of the room. The simplest answer was pinned down there with him. Thief caught by his own prop. It had style, it had motive, and it had the advantage of being wrong. At 7:32, I rode the elevator down, leaving Kramer to his procedures and Chetwinde to his donors. The amber Citadel's lobby swallowed me in polished stone and hush. Outside, the city was finally awake. So was the case. Whoever had arranged that neat tableau thought we'd buy Reddan as our villain and be grateful. They hadn't counted on Nero Wolfe, and they certainly hadn't counted on me skipping coffee. And on mornings like that, I start quietly collecting debts early. The bell went off at 9:07 a.m., which was a crime against my nerves and Wolfe's schedule. He was upstairs with the orchids, and unless the house was on fire or the IRS was holding Fritz hostage, nobody interrupted orchid hours. I opened the door to a man who looked like he'd bought the world wholesale and wanted a refund. Behind him came another, thinner, sharp-nosed lawyer to the last syllable of his shoes. The big one didn't wait for an invite. He bulled into the office like a stormfront in a pinstripe suit. I am Harlan Chetwynd, he announced, and I demand to see Mr. Wolfe immediately. Fine, I said. He's busy communing with Flora until 11. You can wait or bloom quietly in the corner. He swung on me, face red as Fritz's beets. Young man, do you know who? Sure. Builder of the Amber Citadel, maker of fine skyscrapers and poor mornings. Sit. He didn't. The lawyer adjusted his tie. Mr. Goodwin, my client has been subjected to the most unfortunate insinuations in today's press. The Gazette is hinting at negligence in last night's tragedy. We require Mr. Wolfe's services for a confidential consultation. That last word carried a scent of money large enough to reach the plant rooms. I considered using the house phone, but Wolfe hates static interrupting his orchids. So I pressed the bell cord once, short and sharp. Upstairs the signal would blink. A moment later the elevator hummed. Wolfe descended, silent, monumental, expression unreadable. He entered in his mustard-yellow robe, looked the pair over, and spoke as if choosing the least offensive syllables. Gentlemen, you intrude upon the only civilized hours left to me. This had better justify trespass. Chetwynd took it as license to bark. My curator's death has invited scandal. I will not have the Citadel's name dragged through gutters. You are Nero Wolfe. You'll handle this. I will handle nothing, Wolfe said, settling into his chair. Not before I know whether your distress is moral, legal, or purely financial. It's all three, Chetwynd snapped. The press claims Redden stole the Amber Venus. Lies. He died serving me. I want the thief found quietly. Wolfe frowned. The police are competent for theft, less so for discretion. Yet your tone presumes authority over me. I take cases. I am not summoned like a plumber. The lawyer produced an envelope. My client offers a retainer commensurate with urgency. Commensurate is elastic, Wolfe murmured. State a figure. Chetwynd thrust a cheque across the desk. The paper looked heavy enough to sink a ship, 50,000 certified. Fritz would have fainted. Wolfe merely lifted it, studied the signature, then set it down. A respectable sum, but money buys attention, not obedience. Mr. Chetwynd, I warn you, if at any stage I detect deceit, I withdraw instantly and retain the fee. Agreed, Chetwynd said too fast. That speed made Wolfe's eyes narrow. Then our terms are clear. He reached for the desk drawer, withdrew a heavy ledger, and signed the new entry with ceremonial slowness. Now, you will explain the matter from the beginning, omitting adjectives. As Chetwynd recited the previous night, his arrival after my call, the police, the press leaks, I watched his hands. One rested on the arm of his chair, gloved loosely. The other tugged at his cuff, revealing a button of amber, golden and clouded. It wasn't just ornament. The inclusion inside the stone had the same milky swirl I'd seen on Redden's fused cufflink that morning. Identical craftsman, maybe identical source. When he paused for breath, I said, "That's a fine cufflink, Mr. Chetwynd. Do they make them in pairs or alibis?" He stiffened. Wolfe shot me a glance of weary tolerance. "Archie, confine your levity." I spread my hands, just admiring the workmanship. Hard to find amber with that pattern, looks like frozen smoke. The lawyer intervened. "Irrelevant, Mr. Goodwin." "Everything is relevant until Mr. Wolfe says otherwise," I told him. But Wolfe's raised palm ended it. He asked about insurance, ownership titles, access keys. Chetwynder answered in short bursts. The lawyer filled gaps with words like proprietary holdings and internal oversight. Each phrase smelled of varnish over rot. Finally Wolfe sighed. "You wish me to investigate not for justice but for silence." Chetwynder leaned forward. "I want results. The board meets in 48 hours. If this isn't contained, I lose contracts, influence, everything. You'll be compensated for speed." "Phooey, I am not a courier." Wolfe tugged the bell cord. "Fritz, beer." While Fritz appeared with a tray and a chilled glass, Wolfe continued, "My methods are deliberate. You will grant me liberty to inquire as I see fit. No interference from your lawyers, your guards, or your conscience. Agree or remove your check." Chetwynder's jaw worked. "Do what you must." Wolfe nodded once, accepted the beer from Fritz, and drank deliberately before speaking again. "You will provide a full roster of employees, trustees, and associates with access to the sculpture hall. Mr. Goodwin will call for it at 2 this afternoon." The lawyer scribbled notes. Chetwynder rose, slower now, deflated but trying to sound in control. "Very well. I knew you'd be the man for this." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "And you may thank your check for persuading me. Money, though vulgar, has the advantage of clarity." When they left, I walked to the window, watched their car pull away, and said, "That's the loudest hush money I've ever seen cross a desk." Wolfe snorted. Silence is a luxury the wealthy purchase when their secrets outweigh their assets. He examined the check again, turned it between his fingers, then placed it in the safe. I leaned on the desk. "You believe his grief?" "No. His anxiety is not for the dead, but for discovery. He dissembled at least twice, once about Redden's fidelity, again about the board's knowledge. And you noticed his ornament." "The amber cufflink?" "I did. Same cloudy swirl as Redden's cuff." "Precisely. An inclusion unique to a single craftsman. I will need the name of that craftsman." "Saul can nose that out," I said. "And if it turns out both came from the same jeweller, that ties them closer than a payroll." "Possibly." He finished his beer, the ritual sigh following. "Archie, deposit this check. Then telephone Mr. Kramer. Inform him that I have been retained independently of his investigation, but will cooperate as far as prudence allows." I grinned. "You mean we'll tell him enough to irritate him, but not enough to help?" He glared. "Your flippancy is an economy I tolerate, nothing more." "I'll bill it under morale." He grunted, half annoyance, half reluctant amusement, and reached for another glass. "Also, prepare a memorandum summarizing this visit. Include the client's demeanor, attire, and verbal infelicities. Precision, Archie." "Yes, sir. I'll type it between calls from the DA's office." As I crossed to my desk, Fritz reappeared quietly with a small silver tray. "Lunch will be delayed, Herr Wolfe. The butcher was late." "Unacceptable," Wolfe said, but mildly. The morning's challenge had revived him. "We shall adjust the schedule. I will attend the orchids at noon instead of 4. "That'll make them think they've been promoted," I said. He ignored me, already opening his notebook to dictate questions about humidity, amber density, and the tensile strength of bronze bases. I took shorthand automatically, mind still replaying Chetwynder's cufflink catching the light, same trapped swirl as on the dead man's jewellery. When he finished, he leaned back. "You are pondering, Archie." "Just wondering whether 50 grand covers moral indigestion." He allowed the faintest smile. "In most men, no. In me, perhaps. Deposit the check and order Saul to begin discreet inquiries regarding amber craftsmen. We proceed." "Fine," I said, grabbing my hat. "But if that check bounces, I'm charging him interest on charm expended." "Archie." His voice halted me at the door. He didn't look up. Do not underestimate Miss Varn. Her distress yesterday was genuine, but her silence this morning may not be voluntary. Guard your tongue when speaking to her. That was as close as Wolfe came to take care of yourself. I gave a short nod. Sure, I'll handle her gently, if she doesn't handle me first. He waved me off, already turning pages of the case ledger with the care of a priest flipping scripture. As the elevator hummed to carry him back to his orchids, I pocketed the deposit slip and checked the safe, still locked, the check inside like a golden bribe. Outside, the storm clouds over Manhattan were breaking, sunlight slicing through like a searchlight. It fit the mood, money on the desk, death in the papers, and my boss already smelling deceit through layers of marble and ambition. I shut the office door behind me, muttering, for $50,000, even truth ought to wear gloves. The freight level of the amber Citadel smelled like oil, metal, and insomnia. Down there, glamour didn't reach, just the hum of machinery and the clatter of ambition working overtime. The air was damp enough to wrinkle paper, and the light came from flickering bulbs that made every shadow look guilty. It was 11:14 p.m., and I was doing what any honest man would do at that hour, sneaking around a millionaire's basement with Saul Pantzer. Saul moved like a rumor. You sensed him near but couldn't prove it. He wore his flat cap low, eyes alert, mouth quiet. Whoever thought to hide evidence in a boiler room, he whispered, didn't want janitors involved. Janitors, I murmured, don't usually strangle people. They just sweep up after them. Saul gave a sideways look that passed for amusement. We followed the concrete corridor to the freight elevators. Two stood open like steel coffins. Between them, on a stack of wooden crates marked Fragile, Exhibit Film, sat a small metal canister. Security footage, Saul said, numbered reel, missing from last night's list. I reached for it, careful as if it might explode, which in this town it might have. The lid was smudged with amber-coloured dust. That makes the set, I said. The statue, the cufflink, the cuff button, now the film can. He crouched, examining the floor. Footprints. 2 sets, small heel prints, woman's shoes, and a man's work boots. Don't say it, I told him. I'm saying it, he replied. The woman's prints match Miss Varn's shoes from last night. I stared down. Same narrow toe, same pattern. She was here earlier, sure, but she didn't throttle a watchman to keep her figure. Saul's hand went up. Listen. Somewhere behind the elevator shaft came a sound, metal scraping stone, slow and deliberate. We followed it, guns low. The shadows swallowed us whole. A minute later we found the source. The night watchman lay half behind a stack of packing crates, head twisted, eyes staring. His cap had rolled off. Around his neck, a loop of silk cord bit deep. The end of it caught the dim light, glimmering faintly gold with powdery resin. Saul whistled softly. That cord's fancy, the kind used to tie museum curtains. Yeah, I said. Somebody believes in symmetry. Art gets stolen, guard gets arranged like an exhibit. I bent to check pockets. Wallet intact, keys, a folded time card punched cleanly up to 10 p.m. I sniffed. Cord smells faintly sweet, not perfume, amber again. Saul knelt by the crates. No sign of struggle. He didn't see it coming. And Miss Varn? She's a red herring, Saul. Pretty one, but still a fish. We searched the rest of the corridor. No more surprises, just machinery humming like it enjoyed secrets. The freight elevator doors closed automatically with a clang that echoed down the passage, and I decided I'd had enough atmosphere for one night. We got the film canister back to the brownstone by 12:37 a.m. Wolfe was waiting, which meant he'd sacrificed bedtime or beer, possibly both. He sat at his desk in his maroon robe, eyes half-shuttered but mind lit up. The office was warm with the smell of orchids drifting faintly from upstairs. Report, he said, as if it were breakfast. I put the canister on his desk. Found this downstairs at the Citadel, the missing reel. Also, a corpse, the night watchman. Silk cord, fancy make, flecked with amber. Saul's running cross-checks on curtain supplies. Wolfe grunted. Confound these fetishists of aesthetics. Killing by artifice, silk, amber, symmetry. New York's full of art lovers, I said. They just show it differently. He picked up the canister delicately, holding it like poison. We will view this in due course. First, the police must be informed. I already called Kramer on the way. He's got sirens headed there. He also said to tell you, quote, if this turns into another Wolfe sideshow, I'll personally padlock your beer fridge. That earned me one of Wolfe's looks, the kind that could turn milk back into a cow. Archie, Inspector Kramer's vocabulary is as impoverished as his manners. Put him through. At that moment, the phone rang. Timing's his gift. I handed Wolfe the receiver, but he motioned for the extension. I lifted it on my side. Wolfe, Kramer barked, his voice full of gravel. You've got a dead guard at the Citadel, and your man's footprints all over the floor. My man, Wolfe replied smoothly, was retrieving evidence that your department mislaid. That's a fancy way of saying trespassing. Pfui, if you prefer to remain ignorant of developments, say so now. I chipped in. Easy, Inspector. We're on the same page. Mine just has better grammar. Goodwin, Kramer snapped. You'd better start praying that can of film isn't doctored. I've got people who'll view it before Wolfe can sniff it. Then we're all eager to learn, Wolfe said evenly. You will also observe the silk cord around your victim's neck. The dusting of amber is significant. I already got your amber theory from Goodwin, Kramer growled. Doesn't make her innocent. Her? Wolfe inquired, tone cooling. Yeah. Your pal Delia Vaughn was seen on the freight level earlier tonight. Guard in the lobby remembers her. She signed the log at 9:30. I straightened in my chair. She went there because Chetwynder sent her to collect documents. She's no strangler. Kramer grunted. That's so. Then maybe she tripped and strangled a 6-foot man by accident. Wolfe's voice went deep, warning. Inspector, I strongly advise you to curb conjecture until your facts evolve from rumour to evidence. Kramer didn't answer at once. Then, all right, I'll look into the time cards. But if she runs, Wolfe, this time you don't get a medal for hiding her. I hide no one. I merely observe when the police prefer not to see. Yeah, Kramer said. Your man there said the guard's time card ends at 10. For your information, that punch was made after he was dead. That froze the air a second. What? I said. Yeah, the doc says the guy died before 10. Somebody fixed the card later to look routine, so tell Wolfe his amber dust better start singing hymns fast. Wolfe said quietly, You have my condolences for your confusion, Inspector. If you wish to learn more, consult chemistry. Amber, when heated, leaves resin volatile enough to cling to silk. Your killer is methodical, not impulsive. Miss Vaughn lacks the temperament and the strength. Thanks for the lecture, Kramer said. You'll get my report in the morning. The line clicked. Wolfe leaned back, staring at nothing. A strangled watchman, amber on silk, falsified time card, all devised to mislead. Mr. Chetwynder's world of machinery has finally devoured one of its caretakers. That's poetic, I said, but poetry doesn't get Miss Vaughn out of the police blotter. Nor you out of my irritation, he replied. Nevertheless, you will see her tomorrow. Reassure her, gently, that we have the film and that she must remain accessible. She'll like that about as much as Kramer likes you. I am accustomed to mutual displeasure, he said. Now beer. Fritz, anticipating like a saint, appeared at the doorway with the tray. The glass was frosted, the colour perfect. Wolfe poured and lifted it. To the dead, he said softly, whose silence exposes the living. I looked at the film canister gleaming under the desk lamp. You sure you don't want to peek? Not tonight. My mind requires repose. The film will not dissolve. I grinned. If it does, we'll just ask the amber where it went. He ignored me, sipped and set the glass down. Archie, file a memorandum. Title, Convergence of Amber and Industry. Tomorrow, before Kramer returns, I intend to demonstrate that what Mr. Chetwynder built for art has become a forge for death. Sounds catchy, I said. We can sell it to the Gazette if the client check bounces. He cut me a glance that almost passed for affection. You are irrepressible, and I, alas, am dependent upon that defect. That's the sweetest thing you've said since breakfast. Enough, he said. We adjourn. He rose slowly, like a mountain deciding to shift, and headed for the elevator. I turned off the lights, leaving only the lamp's glow on the desk. The amber dust from the canister still clung to my fingertips, faintly luminous. Somewhere out there, a killer with a taste for art and precision was polishing his next masterpiece. I pocketed a note card and murmured to the empty room, "Fine, let's see if beauty kills twice." The elevator hummed, Wolfe vanished upward, and the brownstone settled back into its quiet. Beer, orchids, and one cold mystery waiting for morning. The amber Citadel had never looked so pleased with itself. By 7 the following evening, its marble lobby glittered like a cocktail shaker. Press, patrons, and parasites all stirred together under gold chandeliers. I'd been issued a pass by Chetwinder's office, complete with the kind of badge that says "trusted guest" while implying potential suspect. Delia Varn hovered near the refreshment table in a pale green gown that made her look both elegant and out of her depth. I stationed myself by the nearest exit, camera ready, trying to look decorative. At precisely 7:30, Chetwinder took the stage, a platform framed by amber pillars and self-importance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "the rebirth of the Amber Venus." The velvet curtain drew back to reveal the statue, tall, luminous, the light catching fire in its curves. The crowd sighed the way crowds do when they're told they're witnessing art. Then the lights flared. A sound like a sigh and a cough came from inside the statue, and the Amber Venus burst. The noise wasn't loud, just final, a contained implosion. Shards flew like golden rain, slicing air and silk alike. Screams followed, the orchestra drowned in chaos. Someone's champagne hit the floor. Delia stumbled backward. I grabbed her by the arm and dragged her behind a column before the falling debris could make her part of the display. When the air cleared, the goddess was gone. Only fragments of honeyed resin glimmered across the marble floor. The crowd surged, half panic, half fascination. I raised my camera and snapped 3 shots before the security guards noticed. The bulb flared blue-white, capturing the wreck like a crime frozen in firelight. "Mr. Goodwin!" Delia gasped. Her eyes were huge, pupils blown. Was it a bomb?" "Not unless somebody filled her with dynamite and hope," I said. "Stay put." I moved toward the dais. Redden's assistant was trying to cover shards with his coat, which made about as much sense as hiding Niagara Falls under a napkin. I crouched, brushed aside a chunk with my penknife. Inside, instead of solid amber, there was a thin shell, hollow, lined with metal braces and a smear of blackened residue where something cylindrical had once been fixed. Whatever had been hidden there was gone. That wasn't art. It had been accounting, and somebody had already withdrawn the balance. I pocketed a scrap of the lining and stood up, aware of flashbulbs popping again, this time from reporters. Chetwinder's face had gone the colour of bad cream. He barked orders no one followed. The guards herded guests toward the exits. The air was full of perfume and fear. I got Delia out through a side corridor before Kramer arrived with half of Manhattan's uniformed finest. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe had already heard through Lon Cohen's first edition. He was at his desk when I came in, hands tented, eyes hooded. The scent of orchids still clung to him like an alibi. "You are late," he said. "I stayed to make sure civilization didn't collapse completely," I told him, dropping the camera case on his blotter. "Here's the headline version. The Amber Venus went pop like a champagne cork. No injuries, just hysteria. Inside the statue, microfilm." "Describe it." "Industrial contracts. Chetwinder's firm, foreign names, some war dates. Looks like somebody hollowed her out to smuggle documents, not display art." He nodded once, as if confirming a suspicion he'd already eaten for lunch. "The explosion?" "Deliberate, but not sabotage. Too neat. The shards formed a ring pattern, centered perfectly, like she was designed to break." Wolfe leaned forward. "Designed? You're certain?" "Positive. The inside was ribbed like an aircraft hull. Whoever built her knew what they were doing." He muttered, "A fraud encased in beauty." Then softer, "Like civilization." I slumped into the red chair. Fine, but civilization just bled on my tie, and Delia nearly fainted again. "You'll have to charge extra for emotional trauma." He ignored that. "You photographed the fragments?" "All angles. The police will have the scene cordoned, but I've got the good shots." "Develop them. The pattern of breakage will show whether the microfilm was inserted post-casting or before. That distinction will tell us who profited." "Chetwinder, maybe. The man's got more secrets than this building has floors." "Perhaps. Yet he would not destroy his own monument before the city's elite unless coerced. Wolfe reached for the bell cord. "Fritz, beer." While Fritz delivered the tray, Wolfe studied my face. "Miss Varn?" "She's rattled but clean," I said. "And before you say otherwise, no, she couldn't have engineered that statue. She jumps when a cork pops." "I shall reserve judgment." He poured the beer into a chilled glass, the ritual soothing him. "Inspector Kramer will call within the hour. He will accuse me of prior knowledge. You will deflect." "Deflecting Kramer takes a lead shield," I said. He sipped, unamused. "He will ask about the microfilm. You will tell him nothing beyond its existence." "Won't that make him love us even more?" "It will preserve our advantage," Wolfe said. "The press will brand this vandalism. Kramer will call it conspiracy. We, Archie, will call it progress." "Progress toward what?" "The unmasking of deceit polished to glow like amber," he said. "Now go. Civilization demands its negatives." He turned toward his orchids as I carried the camera upstairs, muttering that civilization could also demand my dry cleaning. It was the kind of invitation that made common sense file for early retirement. Evelyn Drake's voice on the phone had that smooth, low current that turns tea at 8 into a felony. I went anyway. Curiosity might have killed the cat, but it's been paying my rent for years. Her penthouse was 15 stories above any trace of decency, perched over Park Avenue in gilt and glass. The maid, a silent brunette with the posture of a statue that disapproved of men, showed me in. Evelyn was waiting in an armchair framed by city lights and the soft growl of a jazz record. Her dress was silver-grey satin that reflected more truth than it hid, and her smile was a professional hazard. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, rising with a grace that ought to be registered, "I thought you might indulge a lonely hostess." "Depends," I said. "Some hostesses serve sandwiches, others subpoenas." She laughed, one note smoky. "Just tea and conversation." The table held a silver pot, 2 cups, and a plate of lemon slices that hadn't been touched. I took the chair opposite and kept both hands visible. "All right, let's pour the scandal." Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to me. "Miles Redden's death has been on my conscience. He was devoted. He knew too much about my affairs." "I'll bet the affairs were mutual," I said. Her smile didn't move, but her voice cooled. "You think I'm playing games, Mr. Goodwin? But Miles was frightened before he died. He told me he'd found something that could ruin Chetwynd. A ledger of buyers from before the war. Smuggled art, laundered through charities. He begged me to keep it safe." "And did you?" She reached into a lacquered box on the table and produced a folded sheet, yellowed at the edges. "I kept this much." She unfolded it with careful fingers. The paper trembled faintly, not from fear, I thought, but theatre. One torn page, names, sums, initials. She handed it across. The handwriting was small, elegant, deliberate. Halfway down the list I saw them, DV. The D was flourished, looping like a designer's signature. Not Delia Varn's hand. I'd seen her sign receipts. This one belonged to someone copying her. "Interesting," I said. "DV might stand for Delia, or maybe Dangerous Venture." She tilted her head. "You don't believe me?" "I believe everyone once," I said. "The trick is not to repeat the mistake." She rose, crossed to the window and looked down at the river of headlights below. "I didn't kill him, you know." "That's refreshing. Usually people wait for me to accuse the chemman before denying it." She turned, eyes sharp now. "You think this is about love? It's not. It's about survival. That ledger could destroy half the men who built this city's fortune. Do you think they'll let it surface?" "Depends how attached they are to breathing," I said. "Where's the rest of it?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Miles never told me. But someone thinks I do. They've telephoned twice. No words, just silence and breathing." "Then you've got yourself a fan club," I started to say, when the glass behind her exploded. The sound hit like a whip crack. She cried out and dropped to the floor, silver satin flashing as she fell. I hit the carpet beside her, gun out, scanning the black mouth of the window. The wind shoved in cold air and the scent of cordite. Somewhere outside, a car engine revved and faded into traffic. "Stay down," I told her. She was shaking, one hand gripping her shoulder. No blood, just shock. I crawled forward, peered through the broken pane. Across the street, a window curtain moved, too far for a clear shot. I ducked back, grabbed the torn ledger page where it had skidded under the table, and pocketed it. "We're leaving. Someone's idea of punctuation just interrupted our tea." Evelyn managed a shaky laugh. "I warned you it wasn't about love." "Yeah," I said, helping her up. "Next time, let's meet somewhere bullets aren't on the menu." I got her settled with the maid, called the precinct anonymously, and left before uniforms could clutter the elevator. By the time I reached the brownstone, it was nearly midnight. Fritz let me in with a worried look at the scrape on my temple. "Minor," I said. "The city's just expressing itself." Wolfe was in the office, surrounded by the serene glow of lamplight and the comforting smell of beer and orchids. He didn't look up as I entered. "You are late, Archie." "I brought a souvenir," I said, dropping the folded paper on his blotter. "Also, someone tried to ventilate me." That got his eyes open. "Explain." "Evelyn Drake, penthouse view, imported danger. She claims red and dyed protecting her, over a ledger of art buyers. Showed me this page, then someone shot through the window before we could discuss whether I preferred lemon or lead." He unfolded the sheet, studied it without touching. The handwriting. Not Delia's. Someone faked her initials to frame her. Fancy penmanship, though. Maybe the same hand that forged Redden's museum reports. He sniffed. "So you endanger yourself? Risk contamination of evidence and bring me a partial forgery. Splendid economy." "Glad to serve," I said. "You could show a little gratitude. I dodged a bullet for your theory." His brow furrowed. "Archie, your bravado jeopardizes the investigation and my digestion." I grinned. "I'm improving both. We can cut Delia off the suspect list." "Perhaps," he conceded, though she remains perilously adjacent to guilt. He tapped the page with a fingertip. "Desire and avarice, twin forgers of civilization. This ledger unites them." "And I unite the bruises," I said. "We make a great team." He leaned back, eyes closing briefly. "Fetch me the Gazette files on post-war art sales. Also call Saul. We must trace the origin of this hand. There is a forger among our art lovers, and he has not yet finished shooting." I saluted lazily. "If he tries again, I'll charge admission." "Archie," Wolfe said, voice dropping to something almost soft. "Do not make light of your mortality. It is one of the few assets I cannot replace." That one hit deeper than his usual lectures. I said, "Don't worry, sir, I'm insured. Besides, the shooter missed, probably distracted by civilization collapsing." "Pfui," he said, but there was relief hiding behind it. "Go to bed. Tomorrow we dine at war with art." He reached for the bell cord. Fritz appeared with the tray, beer for him, black coffee for me. I raised my cup. "To civilization," I said. "May it stop bleeding on my tie." Wolfe grunted, lifted his glass, and drank. The brownstone was quiet enough to hear Fritz polishing silver in the dining room when the bell rang. It was 11:48 p.m., an hour reserved for burglars, doctors, or Inspector Kramer. I didn't expect the first two. When I opened the door, the scent of cigar smoke hit first, cheap, relentless, and familiar. Kramer stood there looking like Manhattan had leaned on him all day. His hat was tilted back, his tie slack, his eyes rimmed red from tobacco and bureaucracy. "Evening, Goodwin," he said. "Don't look so pleased. Wolfe still awake?" "If he isn't, we'll wake him by shouting compliments," I said. "Come in before your cigar sets off the smoke alarm Fritz doesn't know we don't have." He grunted, stepped inside, and trudged to the office like he'd memorized the way years ago. Wolfe was in his chair, robe belted, book open but ignored. He raised his head at the sound of Kramer's shoes. "Inspector," Wolfe said gravely, "you arrive late. A social call, or has civilization collapsed again?" Kramer dropped into the red leather chair across the desk. "You know damn well it's not social. I've been to City Hall twice today. The mayor's office wants Delia Varn booked by morning. Political pressure, Wolfe. Pure and simple. The case stinks, but they want it wrapped with a ribbon before breakfast." Wolfe set the book aside, closed it precisely, and folded his hands. "Then you have my sympathy, not my compliance." Kramer's lips twitched around the cigar. "You think I came here for sympathy?" "I think you came," Wolfe said, "because the weight of an unjust order offends you. You are obstinate, Inspector, but not corrupt." Archie Goodwin, commentator at large, stepped in. He also runs out of cigars faster when he's irritated. Want me to fetch an ashtray before you melt the carpet? Kramer shot me a look that could tan leather, but he let me place the tray anyway. I'm not here to spar with you, Goodwin. I need facts, solid ones, that'll keep that girl out of the tombs. Wolfe leaned back, eyes half shut. You've already decided she's innocent. I've decided she's the least dirty in a filthy pile, Kramer said. Redden's dead, the watchman strangled, the Venus blown to hell, and now I've got Chetwynder screaming about sabotage and the press chewing the department for dessert. He jabbed the cigar toward Wolfe. You've been sniffing around this case since day one. You've got something. Spill it. Phooey. Wolfe's tone made the word sound like an epitaph. I will not spill. I will, however, elucidate. He gestured to me. Archie, the packet from Saul. I opened the safe, withdrew a folder thick with notes and placed it on the desk. Wolfe slid one page free, a lab report with smudges that made Fritz's cleaning instincts cry for help. This, Wolfe said, is the resin sample from the silk cord that strangled the watchman. We compared it to amber fragments from the exploded statue. The composition was similar, but the contaminant was unique. A synthetic polish, resin varnish, used exclusively by the Chetwynder Construction Company to finish its office furniture. Kramer stared. You're saying the killer worked there? I'm saying, Wolfe replied, the cord was handled by someone who had regular access to that polish. And since Mr. Chetwynder's empire does not hire painters to strangle night guards, the implication narrows beautifully. Kramer puffed smoke and thought. Hell, you're pointing at Chetwynder himself. I am pointing, Wolfe said mildly, at his proximity to guilt. Whether he tied the knot himself or deputized another remains open. Kramer blew out a long breath. That's dynamite, Wolfe. You realize if I run with it, the mayor'll skin me alive. Chetwynder's the city's golden boy. Contracts, donations, you name it. Then perhaps, Wolfe murmured, you should consider how golden idols sometimes hide clay beneath. Spare me scripture, Kramer growled. You're holding back. Who's your client? Wolfe's eyes flicked to me, then back. Confidential. Confidential, hell. If it's Vaughn, I need to know. Otherwise I can't protect her from the DA's dogs. Your candor does you credit, Wolfe said, but my oath of discretion outweighs your desperation. Kramer slammed his palm on the arm of the chair. You always do this. Tease just enough to make my ulcers dance. Wolfe's voice rose half a note. You forget yourself, Inspector. I am not your subordinate. I assist justice, not politics. My client's identity is irrelevant to the veracity of evidence. I stepped in before Kramer's cigar hit the rug. Gentlemen, before someone sues the air for slander, how about a drink? Kramer glared but didn't refuse. Wolfe hesitated, then to my astonishment nodded once. Archie, 2 beers. I blinked. 2? Yes, one for Inspector Kramer. He looks parched, and I prefer not to witness dehydration in my office. Kramer muttered, First time I've seen hell freeze. But when I returned with the tray and the tall glasses, he took his like a man pardoned from hard labour. He sipped, sighed, and said quietly, You know, Wolfe, sometimes I think you keep me alive just to annoy me. Wolfe lifted his glass in acknowledgement. If that is so, it is mutually beneficial. For a few moments, the only sound was the fizz of carbonation and the steady tick of the wall clock. Then Kramer spoke again. About the Polish. You got proof it's exclusive? Archie, Wolfe said. I flipped open another page. Saul Panzer lifted purchase records from a supplier, Harper Industrial. Only one order for that formula in the last 3 years. Chetwynder's firm. Custom tint, golden sheen. Matches the residue exactly. Kramer whistled low. All right, that's solid, but it's not enough to convict. You got motive? Control, Wolfe said. Chetwynder's empire grew on secrecy. The Amber Venus concealed contracts tying him to wartime smuggling. When Redden discovered it, he became expendable. Hell, Kramer said softly. You think the big man had him killed to keep the ledger buried? Or to buy silence, Wolfe said. The watchman stumbled upon something, or was bribed to assist. When he grew nervous, he too was removed. The amber polish tied both deaths together as efficiently as money binds power. Kramer rubbed his temple. If I hand this upstairs, they'll bury it. The mayor owes Chetwynd half his re-election fund. Then don't hand it upstairs, I said. Hand it sideways, press leak. Lon Cohen owes me 3 dinners. Kramer shot me a wry glance. And you'd love the headlines. Wolfe outsmarts City Hall. Not my phrasing, I said. I'd go with Amber Empire cracks under pressure. Even Wolfe's lips twitched. Enough, Archie. He looked at Kramer again, softer now. Inspector, I understand your constraints, but Miss Varn is innocent, and unless you wish to trade integrity for expedience, you must resist. Kramer stared at his beer like it might argue back. You ever get tired of being right? Often, Wolfe said, but I endure. There was silence. The city murmured faintly through the curtained windows. The brownstone felt like an island holding 2 men who understood too much about duty. Finally, Kramer stood, stubbed his cigar in the tray, and said, Fool yourself, Wolfe, but you're still the best damn mind in Manhattan. Wolfe inclined his head, accepting it as though it were a medal. You flatter me. Go then, and remember, truth, like amber, preserves what the world would decay. Kramer paused at the door. You and your metaphors. Metaphors, Wolfe replied, are safer than politics. He left without another word. I closed the door and turned. You poured him a beer, boss. I may faint. Don't be absurd, Wolfe said. It was diplomacy. He needed it more than I. You'll ruin your reputation. Reputation, he said dryly, is an overrated commodity. Fetch me the film canister from the cabinet. I did. He opened it, extracted the developed frames from the Citadel explosion. The light from the desk lamp turned the negatives to ghostly gold. Observe, he murmured. The shards. See how they form concentric patterns. Deliberate, engineered. The same precision our killer applies to death. I leaned in. You think Chetwynder rigged it himself? No, but someone who shared his polish, both literal and moral. He replaced the film, sighed, and tugged the bell cord. Fritz, my chair requires sustenance. Fritz appeared with a plate of cheese and bread, eyebrows lifting at the 2 empty beer glasses. One was for the inspector, Wolfe explained. Ah, Fritz said politely. Then hell has frozen, Herr Wolfe. I laughed, earning Wolfe's best glare. Archie, he said, tomorrow you will visit the Citadel offices. Acquire samples from Chetwynder's desk varnish discreetly. Discreetly meaning no gunfire. That would be preferable. I stretched, stifling a yawn. It's past midnight. Want me to tuck you in with the orchids? He sniffed. Impertinence at this hour is intolerable. Go to bed. But as I headed for the door, he added quietly, And Archie, good work tonight. I looked back. You mean surviving Kramer or staying conscious through your metaphors? He closed his eyes. Both. Now remove yourself. I did, smiling. Behind me, the office settled into its late-night hum, the city's heartbeat muffled by velvet curtains, the faint clink of glass, and Nero Wolfe sitting in the glow of his lamp, alone with orchids and justice. The night had the personality of an unpaid bill, cold, sharp-edged, and waiting to be settled. The amber citadel loomed against the Manhattan skyline like a sermon on ambition, every window glowing faintly gold against the fog. You could almost believe the building was proud of its sins. The next night, at 11:59 p.m., I stood by the freight entrance, collar up, hands in pockets, and wished for warmer work. Saul Panzer was somewhere in the shadows behind me, quiet as a prayer you didn't mean. Lon Cohen, bless his ink-stained soul, had already printed the bait, exclusive, Amber Venus core, recovered in police custody. The headline had hit the Gazette's late edition 2 hours earlier, and by now half of Manhattan's sleepless elite was choking on curiosity. Wolfe's plan had been simple, which in his mouth meant terrifyingly complicated. The killer, he'd said, is addicted to control. Deny him knowledge and he will seek it at peril. So we dangled knowledge like catnip, rumour of the statue's surviving core, intact and waiting for police examination. At 11:50 the freight door creaked. A sliver of perfume cut through the damp air. Evelyn Drake's brand, subtle, expensive, and 2 hours too late for safety. She stepped into the cone of Saul's flashlight wearing a fur-collared coat and gilt. Miss Drake, I said, you missed the after-party, or is this the clean-up crew? Her eyes flickered toward the crates stacked in the corner. You said the core was here. According to the Gazette, yes, I said, but they've been known to exaggerate. I hear their source is unreliable." She exhaled, shaking. "You don't understand. If the police really have the core, they'll know what was hidden there." "What was hidden there?" She hesitated, then pulled a small metal box from her purse. "Redden hid microfilm inside the statue's core, contracts proving Chetwynder sold confiscated art during the war. Before they could take it, he took the reels out and gave them to me. He told me to destroy them if anything happened to him, but I couldn't. He died for them." "Funny," I said. "Chetwynder claims he died for art." Her hand trembled on the box. "If those papers see daylight, Chetwynder will lose everything, but I can't carry the weight anymore." That's when Saul's whisper sliced the air from behind the crates. "Archie, someone's moving." Too late. The darkness split with the metallic cough of a safety catch. Chetwynder stepped out, immaculate even at midnight, overcoat crisp, hair combed, eyes glinting like glass under a street lamp. In his hand, a pistol gleamed dull grey. "I'll take that box, Miss Drake," he said quietly, "and thank you, Mr. Goodwin, for arranging this convenient gathering." "Sure," I said. "I like to host. Didn't plan on door prizes, though." Evelyn froze, clutching the box. "Harlan, please, don't." He advanced slowly. "You think I'll let years of work be undone by sentiment? Redden was a fool. He thought confession would cleanse him. But civilization," he sneered, "is built on profitable lies." Saul moved an inch to the left, ghost-like. Chetwynder noticed and raised the gun higher. "Not another step, Mr. Panzer. I've heard of you. Professional vermin." I said, "That's rich, coming from a man who varnishes murder with high finance." He swung the muzzle toward me. "You should have stayed in your brownstone, Goodwin. Nero Wolfe may play God from his chair, but you're mortal enough to die standing." "Maybe," I said, "but I make dying expensive." He smiled, cold, perfect, and took another step. Evelyn whispered, "Harlan, stop." The gun didn't. Then the telephone in my pocket buzzed. It wasn't divine intervention, just Wolfe's punctuality. I lifted it, keeping my tone casual. "Yes, boss?" "Archie," Wolfe's voice rolled through the receiver, calm as a courtroom. "I trust the bait has attracted the desired pest. You could say he's biting the line and the hook." "Excellent. Now listen carefully. When he speaks next, distract him verbally for 4 seconds. Saul will flank right. You will—" "Boss," I interrupted, "if you're giving orders from the couch, at least let me pretend to be the hero." "Archie," Wolfe said, "for heaven's sake, do not improvise. You are not Astaire, and this is not choreography." Chetwynder barked, "Who is that?" "Just my conscience," I said, and dropped the phone into my pocket. "Keeps me from shooting millionaires unnecessarily." Wolfe's voice faintly, "Archie." I moved first. Chetwynder's eyes cut toward the noise, his gun tracking, but my shoulder hit his arm before he fired. The shot went wide, biting concrete. Saul lunged from the shadows, grabbing the wrist. The gun clattered to the floor and spun against a crate. Chetwynder swung once, caught me across the jaw, and regretted it when my knee found his midsection. He went down on one hand, gasping. I kicked the pistol away and said, "Industrial accidents are up this quarter. You might want to file a claim." Evelyn sobbed softly, the metal box still in her hand. Saul cuffed Chetwynder with a pair from his pocket. Quiet, professional, like buttoning a shirt. Chetwynder glared up at me. "You think this changes anything? Those papers will damn the company, but half this city profits from men like me. You'll find no jury clean enough to judge." "Maybe not," I said, "but I bet we can find one poor enough to enjoy it." Saul hauled him to his feet. "What about the lady?" Evelyn had collapsed onto a crate, face pale. "I wanted to stop him," she said weakly. "I swear I did." I crouched beside her. "That box proves it. You held on to the truth when everyone else was selling shares of it." She gave a shaky laugh. "Truth doesn't pay dividends." I took the box from her gently. "No, but it buys sleep." I fished the phone out again and called the brownstone. Wolfe picked up before the first ring had died. "Well," he said, "package secured, villain apprehended, hero slightly bruised, usual ratio." "Archie, spare me levity. I require precision. Describe the scene for record." I did, giving him the essentials. Chetwynder caught red-handed, Evelyn's confession, the microfilm recovered intact. He hummed thoughtfully. And witnesses? Saul, Miss Drake, and 2 janitors who are currently pretending to be invisible. Excellent. Now, you will phrase the arrest as follows. Listen carefully. State that Mr. Harlan Chetwynd is detained under suspicion of homicide and conspiracy to obstruct federal investigation of wartime profiteering. Use those words precisely. They bind the district attorney to federal jurisdiction, which precludes municipal interference. You're writing my script again. I must, Archie, lest the city's legal machinery grind our work into paste. Proceed. I straightened, turned to Chetwynd, and said clearly, Harlan Chetwynd, you're under arrest for homicide and conspiracy to obstruct federal investigation of wartime profiteering. Chetwynder's laugh came out broken. You can't even spell justice in this town. Good thing Wolfe can, I said. Wolfe's voice, faint through the receiver. Well done. Now instruct Inspector Kramer to meet you there within the hour. I shall telephone him separately to ensure cooperation. Copy that. Anything else? Yes. Do not, under any circumstance, allow Miss Drake to be interrogated without counsel. Her remorse is genuine but fragile. I looked at Evelyn, who sat trembling under the industrial light. Understood. Then return promptly. Fritz grows restless when dinner delays beyond schedule. That was Wolfe, only man in Manhattan who could fold murder into meal planning. I closed the phone. Saul had already stepped outside to flag a patrol car. I leaned against a crate and rubbed my jaw where Chetwynder's fist had left a souvenir. Evelyn looked up. Is it over? Almost, I said. Kramer'll handle the paperwork and Wolfe will handle the glory. That leaves me the bruises and the bill. She smiled faintly. You don't hate me? Lady, I said, I've tried hating worse people for better reasons. It never stuck. Chetwynder muttered something under his breath, but the cuffs kept philosophy to a minimum. By the time Kramer arrived, the fog had thickened. He took one look at the scene, Chetwynder glaring, Evelyn weeping, Saul expressionless, and said, What the hell kind of midnight social club is this? Exclusive membership, I told him. 1 tycoon, 1 witness, 1 tired detective, and an absent genius phoning in directions. Kramer grunted, looked at Saul. He fight? Briefly, Saul said. I'll bet Archie enjoyed it. Like ballroom dancing, I said. Only fewer compliments. Kramer bent to examine the amber fragments glittering near Chetwynder's cuff. He picked one up with a gloved hand. Same stuff as the statue. Same stuff, I said. He handled the pieces himself, probably when staging the explosion. That varnish under his nails will match the residue Wolfe found. Kramer nodded slowly. You realize this will blow the mayor's office to pieces? Then consider it a civic renovation. He puffed his cigar, then looked at me. Wolfe told me to tell you, Pfui, and add that I was to thank you, damn it. Coming from him, that's practically affection, I said. He smirked. Don't let it go to your head. He turned to his men. All right, haul him out. Treat him like glass. We don't want our millionaire to chip. They led Chetwynd away. Evelyn watched, tears glittering like the fragments underfoot. When the last uniform disappeared, Kramer exhaled. You tell Wolfe I'll send the full report. And Goodwin? Yeah? You did fine. He left before I could think of a wisecrack sharp enough to ruin the moment. Saul disappeared into the fog to follow up loose ends. I waited until the last echo of footsteps faded, then pulled out the phone again. Wolfe, I said. Yes. Chetwynder's in custody. Kramer's unusually polite. I think the world's ending. Then we shall dine before it collapses, he said. Return at once. Fritz has prepared trout in amber sauce. Amber sauce? A culinary joke, he said. You will appreciate it more with beer. I'll appreciate it more with quiet. Pfui, hurry. He hung up. I stood for a moment in the Citadel's basement, the smell of oil and victory mixing with the night air. The amber fragments caught the light like frozen lies, beautiful and brittle. Civilization, Wolfe had said once, was a fraud encased in beauty. Maybe he was right, but sometimes if you chipped carefully enough, you could still see the truth glowing underneath. I left the building whistling, bruised but satisfied. After all, Wolfe had dinner waiting, and civilization, however cracked, still served its beer cold. At 7:59 p.m., the brownstone was as tense as a courtroom before the verdict. The rain had stopped, but it left the air damp enough to curl Fritz's patience and Wolfe's temper. The office was immaculate, books lined like jurors, the globe dusted, the desk arranged with surgical precision. Wolfe sat enthroned behind it, yellow silk robe immaculate, eyes half-shuttered but watchful. The bell rang at precisely 8. Fritz, solemn as a priest, showed in the first arrivals, Inspector Kramer and Sergeant Stebbins, shedding wet hats and city grime. Then Delia Varn came in, pale and elegant in navy, with a lawyer trailing like a shadow. Evelyn Drake followed next, veiled, clutching her gloves like they were the only things still loyal to her. Finally, the Chetwynder family attorney, a spare man with a face that looked permanently worried about taxes, took a chair near the door. It was a full house, and I took my usual spot at Wolfe's right, notebook open, pencil ready, pretending the whole circus was just another Tuesday. Wolfe looked up from the papers before him. "Ladies, gentlemen, be seated." You could have heard Fritz polishing silver in the kitchen. Wolfe continued, his tone a symphony of control. "I have asked you here tonight because the police, the press, and the public have been misled. The truth, like amber, has preserved within it the fossils of corruption, and tonight we shall extract them." Kramer grunted. "If this is another lecture, Wolfe, make it short. I've been up 30 hours straight." Wolfe inclined his head. "Then I shall not waste time, though brevity, Inspector, is seldom the friend of clarity." He lifted a small glass jar from the desk. Inside, golden powder caught the lamplight. "This," he said, "is amber dust, the residue from the statue's original core. It alone has not lied." Evelyn flinched. Delia's fingers tightened around her handbag. Wolfe continued. "The amber Venus was not merely a sculpture. It was a vault, hollowed, reinforced, engineered to conceal microfilm of wartime contracts implicating Harlan Chetwynder in smuggling confiscated art. Mr. Redden discovered the truth weeks ago. He confronted his employer. That confrontation ended with Redden's death, staged as an unfortunate accident beneath a fallen bronze. Delia spoke, voice low. "You can't prove that." "I already have," Wolfe said. "Mr. Goodwin photographed the fragments after the explosion. Their pattern revealed deliberate detonation from within, no act of sabotage but controlled destruction. Chetwynder destroyed the statue to erase the last physical trace of how it had been used, and to bury the trail in spectacle and confusion." Kramer's jaw tightened. "And the Polish match?" "Confirmed," Wolfe said. "The resin used to coat the cords and frame, identical to the polish on Chetwynder's office furniture. He handled the pieces personally, which our laboratory friends have kindly verified by the residue found in his cufflinks." Evelyn stirred. "He told me he would burn everything. I didn't believe—" "Yes," Wolfe interrupted. "You did. But you believed you could turn belief into profit. You attempted to blackmail him with the ledger page you claimed to possess." She rose, eyes flashing behind the veil. "I was desperate. He killed Miles." "And nearly killed you," Wolfe said, to ensure your silence. "But desperation, madam, does not excuse duplicity. You took Chetwynder's money and pretended to destroy the page. You hid it instead. When you heard the rumor about the Venus's core in police hands, you came hunting tonight, not to confess, but to keep that evidence in your control." Evelyn collapsed back into the chair. "You make it sound monstrous." "It is monstrous," Wolfe said, "but not unique. Civilization thrives on such varnish, beauty applied to corruption. I scribbled that one down. It was pure Wolfe, moral indignation by way of classical metaphor." Kramer shifted forward. "So, let's be clear. You're saying Chetwynder murdered Redden and the Watchman, tried to frame Delia Varn and hired Evelyn Drake to clean up after him?" "Not precisely," Wolfe said. "Miss Varn was not framed, she was merely convenient. Her romantic involvement with Redden supplied plausible motive. The killer's genius lay not in framing her, but in letting the world do it for him." Delia spoke again, her voice brittle but steady. "You think I didn't know he was in danger? Miles wrote me that he'd found something holy and unholy at once. I begged him to leave the company. He laughed." Kramer looked at her. "You're saying he told you about the microfilm?" "He told me he'd hidden it," she said. "He didn't say where." That, Wolfe said, was his final mistake. He told Miss Drake instead. Evelyn's veil quivered. He trusted me. No, Wolfe said. He used you. You were his decoy. The letters he left in your possession were deliberate misdirection. He intended the evidence to reach me. He mailed the duplicate amber dust sample to my office the day before he died, with one line, "For the man who collects orchids, not lies." That line landed like a gavel. I remembered opening that envelope, puzzled by the fine powder. Wolfe had stared at it for 10 seconds, then muttered something in Latin I hadn't dared translate. Kramer leaned back. "You sat on that and didn't call me?" "I lacked context," Wolfe said. "Context which arrived when you visited 2 days later, waving your subpoena like a banner. Once comprehension dawned, I pursued confirmation. Tonight's gathering is the consequence." Kramer rubbed his forehead. "You're infuriating, Wolfe, but damn it, you're thorough." "I am alive," Wolfe said mildly. "That requires thoroughness." He turned to Evelyn again. "You confessed to Mr. Goodwin under duress that you sought the documents. I shall not repeat the details. They are recorded and will be provided to the district attorney." Her shoulders sagged. "So it's over." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Your role was tragic but peripheral. The architect of ruin was Harlan Chetwynd. His empire will now crumble as empires built on deceit must." Kramer rose. "You've got the microfilm?" "In police custody by now," Wolfe said. "Mr. Goodwin delivered it this afternoon under my instructions. The evidence is complete." Kramer nodded to Stebbins. "All right. We'll file formal charges in the morning. For once, Wolfe, you beat the politicians to the punch." "Please," Wolfe said, "do not cheapen victory by attributing speed to it." The Chetwynd attorney cleared his throat. "Mr. Wolfe, my firm will of course contest." Wolfe's glare silenced him like a slammed door. "Sir, you will find contest difficult when the truth is embedded in amber, impervious to spin." The man subsided. Delia stood, her voice trembling. "Then Miles didn't die for nothing." "No," Wolfe said softly. "He died for what men have always died for, profit disguised as principle. But at least his death now has meaning." The silence that followed was thick enough to chew. Rain tapped faintly at the window panes as though the city itself wanted to eavesdrop. Kramer broke it first. "All right, I'll take that jar. Chain of custody formal as hell. You've done your part, Wolfe." He stepped forward. Wolfe regarded him a long moment, then nodded. "Inspector, this jar contains the last impartial witness of the affair. Treat it accordingly." Kramer took it carefully. "I'll have it sealed. You have my word." Wolfe's tone softened a fraction. "I accept your word. For all our disagreements, Inspector, you remain incorruptible, a rare and valuable anomaly." Kramer grinned faintly. "Careful, Wolfe, someone might think you like me." Wolfe lifted a hand. "Pfui, I tolerate you, which is the nearest I come to affection." Everyone stood. Fritz appeared at the door, discreet as moonlight. "Herr Wolfe, dinner is ready." "Thank you, Fritz. One moment." Wolfe turned to the assembled group. "Ladies, gentlemen, civilization has survived another self-inflicted wound. Whether it learns remains doubtful. Good night." Kramer gave a brief salute, half military, half respect. "Fool yourself, Wolfe, but you're still the best damn mind in Manhattan." He left with Stebbins, carrying the jar like it might explode. Evelyn followed silently, veiled face turned away. Delia paused in the doorway, gave me a small nod that was half gratitude, half farewell. Then she was gone. When the last footsteps faded, the office sighed back into itself, the calm after judgment. Wolfe leaned back, shut his eyes, and murmured, "Archie, we have again defended civilization from itself." "Sure," I said, closing my notebook. "But civilization still owes me dry cleaning. That amber dust's murder on the cuffs." He opened one eye. "You are frivolous." "Efficiently so," I said. "Keeps me sane." Fritz entered again with the tray, beer, bread, and the faint aroma of something French enough to apologize for everything. Wolfe accepted the chilled glass, lifted it with solemnity, and said, "To endurance, the only virtue civilization still practices." I clinked my glass of ginger ale against his. "To civilization, may it never send me another bill." Outside, Manhattan hummed, taxis swarming, rain hissing against pavements, the restless heartbeat of a city that never learned but always survived. Inside, the brownstone held its ritual peace, orchids waiting upstairs, dinner waiting here, and Nero Wolfe content for the moment to let the world spin without him.